Hey guys, Jameson here. Welcome back to the Nordic Sound channel. I figured I would start this video in a more serene, relaxing environment because I am going to be following up long overdue on a video I did many months ago, Intro to Nordic Folk in 5 albums. Now today I'm going to be doing specifically Norwegian folk, and the reason I want to preface it here in a nice, relaxing environment is because, again, I need to assert that I have a bone to pick with YouTube. If you go into the YouTube search bar and type up Nordic folk, you get very little Nordic folk. Arguably, depending on the theoretical stance you take, you don't even get folk music, because if you consider that a lot of it is made explicitly to be mass disseminated through media, that would make it pop music. Just recording it on acoustic instruments or in acoustic sounding MIDI files doesn't make it folk music. Folk music comes from a tradition. I'm way oversimplifying it. I know this as a folklorist. So if any ethnomusicologists or folklorists want to pick a fight in the comments, I'd love to do so. Anyone who thinks I might be being a bit of a purist or a gatekeeper, let's consider if I were to go out and buy a sitar or a sitar MIDI patch for Logic, fuck around in it for a while, post it to YouTube, and call it Indian folk music. I think we know who'd be the bad guy in that situation. So that's the context that I'm doing this video in, because a lot of you are probably going to click on this video hoping to get a lot of the music that you've come to know here on YouTube as Nordic folk. But I would urge you guys to be open-minded, because the spirit of this channel is to be a responsible place to learn about Nordic music of all kinds, across many traditions, across many generations, many decades, many centuries. And so again, keep your minds open, because today I'm going to be introducing so many of you to the wonderful, beautiful world of actual Norwegian folk music. And now that we're back in a familiar setting, I want to continue this conversation a little bit further. So to be honest with you guys, I do have a little bit of a weird line to walk that I want to make very transparent. I have to walk the line between not vilifying my friends and guests that I've had here on the channel who may have been guilty of doing this in the past, but also being true to my job here as an ethnomusicologist in keeping the integrity of various Nordic music traditions intact, as I talk about them here on the channel as one of the loudest voices on the internet at the moment advocating for Nordic music. But then also, of course, there's the reality that there are very heavy incentives from a marketing and algorithm standpoint to include Nordic folk in your playlist title, genre tag, or YouTube video title, right? It's what people want to listen to. People are very curious about it at the moment. And putting Nordic folk in there gives whatever you make a higher chance of showing up on the front page, right? And sometimes that's just a little too seductive to pass up. But at the same time, there's a weight to the term folk music that can't be ignored, and that is the promise of authenticity. When we, the listener, are looking for folk music and we click on your music or your art labeled as folk music, we are entering into an unspoken agreement that the artist will be giving us a genuine, real, authentic experience. But the flip side to this is that not only are many of us a little too trusting, right, but many of us have nothing to compare this music to be able to decide for ourselves whether what we're hearing is genuine Nordic folk music or not, right? And sorry to say, but 80 to 90% of the music that comes up labeled as Nordic folk here on YouTube just isn't. But most of us really have no way of knowing this, right? Referencing the anecdote that I just made about Indian folk music, where I, an American who knew very little about Indian culture, right, and started marketing my music as Indian folk just because I bought a sweet sitar MIDI pack, then the weight of my irresponsibility is the fact that I am misrepresenting a culture that I have no place representing in the first place, right? While promising people an authentic experience that I am in no position to give them. It would be on the listeners to know that I'm full of shit. Otherwise, I get away with it. And that's really what's at the core of these videos, right? I never want to be in the business of telling you what you're supposed to listen to, what good music is, or what you're allowed to like. If you want to listen to a 27-year-old from Washington, D.C. chant a Disney tune about Valhalla and calling it Viking music, then you do you. But all I can do, and want to do really, is give those who come to the Nordic Sound channel the context and knowledge to make the decision for yourselves, and learn a little bit more, hopefully, about actual Nordic music traditions along the way. And for the Scandinavian folkies in the comments, I want to reiterate the purpose of this video, right? 5 albums that I think introduce people to the general idea of Norwegian folk music. In 5 albums, I can't even scratch the surface of hardanger fiddling, right? I would love to include names like Knut Boen, Annbjørg Lien, Knut Hamra, Bjarte Eka, who I've had on the channel before, and others. Absolutely, I would love to do that. But I'm trying to cover as much ground as I can here in 5 albums for one video rather than just rattling off 5 hardanger fiddle albums. But if anything, I'm leaving myself open for the opportunity to do a more hardanger fiddle centered video in the future. Alright, so in the interest of getting this show rolling, let's get into our beefy first Norwegian folk album that I have for you all that is as good a place as any to get started with Norwegian folk music. And that is Norsk Folkemusikk og Folkedans from Steinar Ofsdal. So technically this is a compilation and not an album, but Norsk Folkemusikk og Folkedans is edited or put together by Steinar Ofsdal, and is I think the best place to get started with Norwegian folk for priming your ears for sort of like the sounds and the types of tunes you can expect to listen to in Norwegian folk, right? You will hear so many different instruments on this album because it's 2 discs long. And you'll hear, you know, Bukkehorn, Langeleik, the Flatfele, the Hardingfele, Jawharp too, if I recall correctly. Probably the Willow Flute or the Seljefløte is in there somewhere. But the point of this album is 2 CDs of just pure, unadulterated Norwegian folk music across styles and featuring many beloved artists from the Norwegian folk music scene. So the reason I'm putting this album as number 1 is because I really do think that this is the place to start if you're like, I just want to sort of dip my toes into Norwegian folk music, see if I like it, see if I don't, see what kinds of it I like, what kinds of it I don't. You really cannot go wrong with getting started with this album. Then next up we have Drøymaren from Gjermund Haugen. Now, Gjermund Haugen is a bit of a historical figure, right? And the reason I chose him is because, as I said, I have so many different hardanger fiddlers to choose from to introduce so many of you to the hardanger fiddle. But the reason I'm choosing Gjermund Haugen is because as one of the earliest recorded hardanger fiddlers, recorded meaning like on a phonograph, not recorded as in we know of, right? He's so formative to the tradition because it's what so many fiddlers had to listen to in the 20th century if they wanted to listen to recorded music. And not only that, but Gjermund Haugen, so he's formative in the tradition, especially in the 20th century. But if I recall correctly, he was also the first hardanger fiddler to perform in a church, where if you consider my Troll Magic video, that's actually a pretty big deal. But he also wrote the waltz Tjoneblomen, which is probably one of the most, if not the most popular traditional Norwegian melodies, and also a favorite of mine and so many others. So the reason why I'm suggesting him is because older style, you can like go straight to the source to see where a lot of people got their influence from. He did have quite an influence on the fiddling scene in the 20th century. So just if I'm gonna pick any hardanger fiddler for you to start with, I would start with the one that many people started with, and that is Gjermund Haugen and the compilation of recordings from him called Drøymaren. So I know it pains me, but I'm going to be leaving the realm of hardanger fiddling so soon to cover, again, as much ground as I can. And I'm going to bring up actually a newer album from the incredible Synnøve Plassen, Den Lyse Dag. So this is an entirely sung album of Norwegian ballads, Norwegian stories, Norwegian folk tunes from this incredible singer. So the reason I'm recommending this album is because, again, trying to cover as many styles and as many aspects of Norwegian traditional music as possible, and in that way, Synnøve here gives us such a massive helping of vocal traditions from Norway to listen to. Solo singing, especially traditional, is not going to be up everyone's alley. It's not going to be what everyone is into. But for those of us who just want to get a more holistic view or who do enjoy solo singing, as I very much do, this album is a great place to start, especially for if you want to learn Norwegian pronunciations or learn how to sing some things, because hardanger fiddles are not the most singable of melodies. This album is definitely the place to start for the vocal side of things. So for this next record, I'm going to be moving out of the strictly traditional to cover sort of the beautiful moment in the late 90s, 2000s, where Norwegian traditional folk music finally opened up to allow, maybe that's too loaded of a word, or at least opened itself up to fusing itself with more popular music forms. And of course, that is Gulta's album Jygri. So, in my interview with Huvendruven I did from way back in the day, we talked about how Norway was a little bit slower than Sweden, and even Denmark, potentially, likely, to open up their traditional folk music to fuse with, rock, jazz, other stuff like that. So when Norway finally did open up, Gulta was really at the forefront of that with their very first album, Jygri. So you will hear, of course, original rock tunes, right? But a lot of this album is also, Snola Mienta, I'm pretty sure, is on that album. A lot of these traditional Norwegian melodies that are being played in like this early 2000s rock style, right? And Gunhild, the singer, is just so incredible. When this album came out, so many just thought that she would immediately be whisked away to a solo career, a very fruitful solo career, because she very much could have done that. Very talented singer in both the traditional side, but also learned classical and jazz singing as well. And of course, so many of us were so many people were introduced to her through this year's Eurovision, where I put my flag in the ground that they did have the best musical performance at Eurovision, even if it wasn't exactly the flashy visual spectacle that people want from Eurovision. But anyway, Gulta is formative in that sort of breaking out of traditional Norwegian music to sort of include itself or interact with other music styles. And this is also, Gulta was the one who, through this fusing of traditional music with rock and even electronica, right, brought these traditional Norwegian melodies to such a broader audience that I don't think it had seen up until that point. So if you want to see what happens when Norwegian traditional music opens up to be included in the pop music sphere of, rock, electronica, right? Definitely check out Gulta's Jygri. And for those of us who are fortunate enough to see them at Midgardsblot this year, it is going to be considered a very special moment to be able to see a band so formative in Norwegian music history of the 21st century, to be able to see them live. It's going to be such a treat. So for my very last record here, I'm going to shake things up, because if I were going to be talking about traditional music from Norway, I don't think I would be able to be happy with myself if I did not include Mari Boina's Gula Gula. So I am not well versed enough in sort of the social politics of what you call what in the Norwegian context. But I probably would not go as far to say that this is traditional Norwegian folk music, right? But the Sami, Mari Boina, of course, are from Norway and the other Arctic regions. And Mari Boina's record here, Gula Gula, was just so influential and so important for bringing Sami music out and to the forefront for others to listen to. And this record in particular was formative to the entire genre of world music, okay? And so many of the musicians and artists that you all love here on the channel from Norway openly and explicitly state how formative Mari Boina's Gula Gula was to their musical experience growing up and how much it continues to influence them, right? So this record is so important on so many levels. Is it traditional Norwegian folk music? No. But it is a folk music and indigenous music style from Norway. So I don't know how to navigate, like, the little weirdness with what to label it. But just for the purpose of this video, I think it would be irresponsible of me to not include Sami music on this in some way. And of course, what better way than to, highlight Mari Boina's Gula Gula, the influence it has had within Norway and outside of Norway as well. So with these 5 albums, what I'm hoping to do is to give you guys a really solid idea of where to start with Norwegian folk music. You can see the names of the dance styles, different names of tunes that you can check out, the different instruments you can expect to hear, and of course the modalities and the ways that these instruments are played, which will, in the Norwegian context, be pretty unfamiliar from what we are used to hearing in the music that we listen to, right? So hopefully, if you guys spin all 5 of these albums, you will find something you like. You'll find something that'll be a little bit of a gateway drug to latch onto. And so with that said, I hope you guys found something that you enjoy in there, but if not, you can at least say that you gave actual Norwegian folk music a chance, and now you have the tools for yourself to decide if what you listen to in the future that is marketed to you as Nordic or Norwegian folk music, now you have a little bit more context, so you can judge for yourselves if what you're listening to is genuine or being marketed truthfully. So guys, thank you so much for watching. What I would love to hear is if you would like me to either continue with these different countries, right? I feel like next I would do 5 albums for Swedish music, or if you'd rather hear 5 albums to sort of wet your bill on the Hardanger fiddle. All right, so just down below in the comments, let me know what you would rather hear next, Sweden or Hardanger fiddle. Inadvertently turning that into a Norway versus Sweden thing. But also let me know if you listen to any of these albums, what tunes, what tracks, what musicians, what instruments stand out to you, and what you notice is a little bit different from what you were used to hearing when something is marketed to you as Nordic or Norwegian folk music. So thank you guys for listening. Take care. I'll see you in the next video.